the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hello, and welcome to AV CrossTalk on AVNation. My name is Chuck Espinoza, and I'll be your host and moderator for this episode of AV CrossTalk, the show that meets the AV industry's most controversial issues head-on. Our AVNation community is made up of some of the most innovative and most opinionated members of the audio-video industry. And every month on AV CrossTalk, we make the most of these invaluable resources by inviting them to discuss the hot-button issues facing AV today. But let's be clear, this is no fireside chat. This is a no-holds-barred, lay your cards on the table debate. We are not here to be agreeable and pat each other on the back. We're here to mix it up, argue, learn, and convince, and maybe even to be convinced. When it's over, you pick the winner by voting on Twitter using the hashtag AVCrosstalk. Before we start, our producer George Tucker and the AVNation legal department want 2 points made perfectly clear. First and foremost, all opinions of the participants are their own and not necessarily those of their employers, any affiliated trade organizations, AVNation TV, or its sponsors. And second, please remember, this is a debate presented here for your education and enjoyment. Any positions advocated or defended may not necessarily in whole or in part be those of the participants. So finally, this is AV Crosstalk. Tonight's debate topic, direct manufacturer sales versus manufacturer's representative sales. Tonight's contestants are two of the most industry's best known and most opinionated bloggers and pundits. In the direct manufacturer sales corner is Mark Coxon. Mark is a 13-year veteran of both the IT and AV industries. As a prolific member of the Rave Blog Squad, a Muay Thai instructor, a connoisseur of fine burritos, and with more than 1,000 followers and 5,000 tweets under his AV Phenom handle, and recently outed as one of the founding members of Cavalry Rides, Mark is a guy who's unreserved about speaking his opinions. A resident of Southern California and regional sales manager for a prominent Midwestern mount, rack, and screen manufacturer, Mark will be speaking first. In the manufacturer's rep sales corner is Josh Srago. Josh is a self-confessed giant nerd with 15 very diverse years of pro audio and AV experience, a love of fine bass amps, sci-fi, interesting conversation, and the belief that judgment should not be placed without the reality first. Josh will be bringing his unique industry perspective of having worked for a manufacturer that utilizes the rep model and Sragonian logic to defend the rep's corner in this bout. Josh is the engineering manager for a San Francisco Bay Area integrator and a frequent contributor to Infocom's All Voices blog, as well as his own site, soundreason.org. Here are the rules of tonight's bout. No kicking, slapping, biting, whining, turning off your camera if you get owned, and no words George may be forced to edit out later. As both Mark and Josh are anxiously awaiting to break all of the aforementioned rules, let's get started with our first topic. When talking about sales, the first and foremost subject that comes up is price. What are the pricing advantages to your model that makes it more economical than the other? Mark?
So here's the thing. Josh is going to start out tonight, and he's going to run you through some mental gymnastics on math and overhead and all these things that he's going to talk about tonight. But I think Josh was asleep under his flat cap in economics class. We have one thing that the rep model, not the manufacturer's rep model, has going against us, and that is there is a fixed cost for every single unit sold, which means at scale, somebody using a manufacturer rep model will pay way more than somebody who is using a direct rep. Josh is going to try to trick you into thinking that because the rep is cheaper, he can put more feet on the ground. And because those feet are on the ground and he runs more lines, those people will be more informed. That is not the case. Josh is going to run you through a bunch of things that are really hiring issues, where you're hiring the wrong people to do the job. What we see in our world is that there is a fixed cost to producing or to selling a product. And as a manufacturer, as a direct rep, that cost is capped. So at scale, which is where we want to be, when we have millions and millions of units sold, we're going to have a much cheaper cost in hiring that rep. The other thing that's going to happen is Josh is going to try to convince you that because that model is more expensive, that means a higher price for you as a dealer. And it doesn't. If you know Peter Drucker and you know his 5 deadly business sins, number 3 is taking your cost and making that how you determine your price. There is a market price for a product. Manufacturers have to sell at market price in order to be competitive, and that has nothing to do with the cost it takes them to produce it. They must find out if they can sell at that price while still making a profit, and they go backwards to their cost, not forward.
All right, Josh, we've heard from Mark. What have you got to say in your defense?
Well, I don't really have much to include here, being as Mark is trying to make my argument for me. And clearly, my favorite part of that is his representative that did 4K mathematics understands how addition works better than he does. So, with that in mind, let's look at what exactly he's saying that I'm going to do. Mark's statement is a direct sales model says we can bring a price based on a specific, however, what the market will bear is effectively what he's trying to say in many different ways of, oh, well, it's going to cost this much because this is how much people are willing to pay for it. That's what, okay, fine. You have one salesperson managing, let's go with, let's start small, a 2-state area. How many people is that sales manager supporting? How many dealers? How many different questions is that person fielding a day? Well, he can only do so many of these things in a given time, plus, in addition to that, he has to be paid a salary, they have to be paid compensation for travel, they have to be paid benefits, they have to be paid 401k, all of the things that come with being an employee of a company, but a rep doesn't have that problem. Because a rep is, you sell it, you make a certain percentage, and the manufacturer gets to set whatever that percentage is. They have the ability of setting the size of their team. It's not just one person per 2 states, per 20 dealers. It is however big they need it to be in order to be sustainable. This all means that the manufacturers can keep those costs low because they don't have to pay for all the extra overhead of travel. That's on the rep, because the rep's whole model is, if I sell something, I make money. If I'm not out there selling something, I'm not making money. So that all comes to the benefit of being to the rep. Again, supply and demand, yeah, that's great. If there's one person in a given region, who's creating the demand? You want these people out on the streets. You want them paying visits to the dealers. You want them creating interest in the product. You want them in people's faces. One person cannot accomplish that nearly as well as, say, 12 or 13 could in a given region. So when you look at the rep model, you see constant advantages of more people being there, less cost to the manufacturer, which helps drop the cost of the product overall because they don't have to support all of that extra sales staff.
Great. All right, so let's talk about product lines. We talked a little bit about cost. Let's talk about the different product lines. Direct sales traditionally has 1, maybe 2 product lines that they send out with their rep, whereas manufacturers' reps will often have many product lines they have. Let's discuss the benefits and the drawbacks of having multiple product lines in one product line. Let's start with Josh first.
Well, of course, the benefits of having multiple product lines is drastic because you're going to walk into a dealer's office and they're not going to necessarily have an interest in your one product. I mean, as an example, we all know Mark works for a prominent screen and mount and rack manufacturer. Well, maybe I don't have a need for a screen because I'm not using projectors, I'm using flat panels. Well, maybe I have a need for a mount, but maybe I already use his competitors because I've been purchasing with them longer, I have a stronger relationship with them for whatever reason. Well, what's he going to talk to me about next? Okay, racks, same deal. Okay, so where's the conversation going now? What are you going to talk to me about? With a rep coming in, because they have built their model of sales on the idea that they're going to carry products that are diverse across the line. In an example of signal flow, they're going to carry a microphone line, they're going to carry a amplifier line, they're going to carry a DSP line, they're going to carry a speaker line, possibly a manufacturer that makes multiples of those things, so that way they can talk to you about a wide variety of things and find something that you need to keep the conversation going. So by having that wide variety of products, they can enhance the conversation, they can spread the conversation wider, and offer you more solutions in a single meeting.
Sure.
All right, Mark?
Yeah, this is where I'd like to come in with Josh on this. And obviously a manufacturer's rep's going to be coming in and talking about multiple lines. Where is he going to focus his time? He gets paid when he sells something, and he gets paid a percentage. So number one, he focuses his time on high dollar, high volume, right? If I sell displays, and displays are $4,000, and that's the biggest thing in my arsenal, I'm going to talk to you about displays first. I'm spending my time there. The second thing they spend their time on, high volume, low dollar, but low attention, right? Wire, I don't need to explain to you a bunch about Cat 5. You buy it all the time. That's going to be my second piece. The third thing I'm going to talk to you about is anything that's high dollar, low volume, RGB spectrum, some type of matrix switcher, some type of scaler that costs $20,000, $30,000. It's going to take me a little more attention. I'm going to make a lot of money on that. What you get is you get somebody coming in who is going to sell you their line card. And if you're relying on these people to help you specify a system, what you're getting is somebody who's financially invested in placing their products into your job. It's the Maslow quote. And when all you have is a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail, right? Josh tells me he has this job, and I start throwing everything at him. In the same respect, Josh has this existing relationship he talked about with the mount company. Does he want to hear about mounts from me? So how do I help promote that line when Josh has already sewn up? That doesn't solve that problem. We're still not going to talk about mounts in that job because Josh is standardized. He's got stuff there. The other problem with the manufacturer rep model, churn, right? Turnover. Not Apple turnovers, Chuck. Don't get excited. I saw some drool. Josh, not employee turnover, right? Employee turnover is rampant throughout the AV industry, whether it's a manufacturer or a rep. Product turnover. I know a rep firm here. They rep mounts. They repped a really high-end brand that I might work for now, right? When they did that, they had to go in, and their story was ease of install, high quality, total cost of ownership, right? That line went away from them. Then they picked up a local line. Now their story is local support, local relationship, US made, right? Then that line left them. Now they have another line, fast follower, Chinese made, low price. Now the story is metal is metal. You're dealing with somebody whose goal is to sell you a product, right? That's their only goal is to sell you that product. And they're going to
salesperson though. Your goal is to sell somebody a product, regardless of whether or not you work.
And what's my story, Josh? Every time I go in, my story is always going to be total cost of ownership and practicality of the mount. If I'm dealing with a dealer who just wants to churn and burn and respond to RFPs and fill out a spreadsheet, that's never going to be my dealer. I'm not going to support that. That dealer's not going to look to me for support because I don't offer the product that meets his business. So there's no changing my story based on who I go in and see. We offer a certain amount of value. Of course I go in and sell that. What I'm saying is the rep firm's idea of value changes based on who's sitting across the table giving him a check for $3 every time he sells 100. And that is really hard to put your trust and faith in specifying something, especially if you're a small company. I have a lot of small companies that call me and ask them to design distributed audio systems or do these things because I happen to know a little more than about mounts. These people trust me to give them an independent opinion and to help them get a job done right. And when you have somebody who reps multiple lines and has to change that mentality every single time, that can be dangerous for a firm who relies on him to be their engineering resource.
Well, with that response, you're basically stating the fact that a rep has no interest in assisting his dealers. You're saying that it's only based on that. They're not worried about the relationship. They're more willing to damage the relationship by that logic. You have flat out said they are there to sell you what they have. They are less concerned about about the relationship they have in maintaining that so that they have the proper support so they keep coming back to you. That is exactly what you've just...
I've had some great manufacturers reps, Josh, and I would never categorize them all as doing that. What I've seen, though, is certain rep firms will decide that they're only taking on certain products, right? That they're only taking on high-dollar, high-value products because their mentality is that this is the type of market I want to service. The guy who sells monitor audio speakers or reps those never reps Niles in-ceiling architectural because he doesn't want to have to change his story and his motivation.
Okay,
right?
All right. So our manufacturers and our reps are both battling toe-to-toe here. What I really want to know, and most people know I'm a quality guy, I'm dealing with the project at the end of the install. I'm dealing with the project after the install's done. What I want to know is product knowledge and post-sale support. It would seem like direct would have the advantage. But then again, if I'm dealing with multiple applications, multiple pieces of equipment, at that point, the rep might have the advantage. So I want to hear from Josh about product knowledge and post-sale support.
When I was working for a manufacturer, I dealt with a lot of reps. And I dealt with reps all over the country because my territory was all 50 states. Like I visited everybody, I spent time in every region. The one thing that I was always fascinated by was hearing the stories of where these reps came from and how many of them were audio technicians, how many of them came from a background of working in the field as an integrator or as a consultant and looked at the rep model and said, hey, you know what, I might be able to make a little bit more money by going in this direction, or I might be able to find another way without stressing myself out with the projects and the demands and the hours that come with being in the consulting and integration world. Because of that fact, a lot of the rep force that's out there has a very long technical background because it's not the first job they're doing. They're not coming in and being taught by the manufacturers, this is the only product that you have. They have a background in this. They have a background as dealers, as consultants, as technicians, and can support the lines that they do. They get specific training from the manufacturers on a regular basis, be it monthly webinars, be it national sales meetings, be it half-yearly sales meetings. They have to invest that time in understanding that product. It has always been my belief, as working for a manufacturer, that if you do not understand the product, you cannot sell the product. And every rep I've ever worked with has always come by that same mentality. They have to be able to at least communicate on a fundamental level what the product does, what its advantages are. Otherwise, the conversation ends before it begins, and no one's going to listen to them. So if the rep can't support the product, if the rep isn't there to take the call, and again, because they're representing multiple lines, they have a wider base for you for that support. So you call them about the speaker that you ordered and you find out what's going on. They have direct lines to the company to talk to the product development team, to the national sales manager, because the manufacturers don't want to lose that sale. The manufacturers want to make sure that the dealers are getting what they need. And because these people are in the dealer's office getting that information, the reps are able to communicate that support as to what the dealers need as well directly back in constant surveys and constant market research, and they're able to get it from a wider spread of people because there are more of them.
Mark, what do you have to say to that?
Well, I would say, like I said up front, what Josh is describing is a hiring problem. That's all Josh is describing. Josh is saying that these manufacturer reps make sure they go out and they get people that are well-versed in multiple lines of AV and they bring them into their fold, right? That's a hiring issue. A manufacturer can do that just as easily. I would argue, I mean, I work directly for a manufacturer. I don't think anybody would argue I know any less about general AV than somebody who works for a manufacturer's rep.
I might the A.
Right? So the thing is that that's a thing of hiring. Let me tell you about a conference call I had with a Fortune 500 client 2 weeks ago. We got 4 guys from our company on the phone with a $6 billion company that resells our product. You know what the first question they asked us is? Are you from a rep firm or are you with the factory? That's the first thing they wanted to know. And when we said we're all with the factory, they said, good, this would have been a short call. We never get anything done on these type of calls when we don't have somebody from the factory here. This is what happens. We don't need the middleman between the people, right? If you have access to a knowledgeable person who sells a product at a good price, would you not rather him work for the manufacturer? If you have the same person, that same rep that you like and love, and he moves to a manufacturer from a rep firm, and he answers your phone call, he knows what he's talking about, and he sells you the product at the price you need to buy it, wouldn't you prefer him to be a step closer? Every single time I've had a problem with a product, whether it was a video extender here local or whether it was a video switch, we had to have the manufacturer's rep get in touch with sales at the manufacturer and get technicians from the manufacturer to our job site to troubleshoot, replace boards, or to configure a product that their website messed up. There was nothing that manufacturer's rep did besides pass that call through. So wouldn't you rather, everything else being equal, get it right from somebody who works at the source? And that's my argument. If you have a knowledgeable person and you're buying the product at the same price and he picks up your call, Josh, you can't say you wouldn't prefer that he worked for the manufacturer.
Well, here's where your dust cloud causes a problem, though. In all that dust you're kicking up about having somebody direct, you just mentioned an example as your primary source where it wasn't a dealer, where it wasn't an integrator, and it wasn't a consultant. It was a Fortune 500 company that went to a manufacturer for something, which means
No,
they're
they're a
bringing
dealer.
it in-house.
Josh, they're a Fortune 500 company that happens to sell our product. That's what they are.
And
So they
in
are a dealer. They
But
are a
in this
dealer of the
call-
product.
In this call, and here's where I want to go with this. Because coming from a manufacturer standpoint, where I took calls from Fortune 500 companies that wanted to partner with it, where they would call the manufacturer, in those cases, what are the kinds of quantities they were talking about? How big was that? So that's one company, one sale that's going to happen with one specific group. If you're devoting so much of your time to that, where's the support for the rest of the dealers that you have?
Josh,
Because you're spending all of your energy supporting a Fortune 500 company because that's where your money is, that's where your bread's buttered, that's where your money's coming from. How are you going to support the rest of the people if that's where your energy is?
But we're not, and that's where structuring a company comes into play, Josh. You know, at the company I work for, we have people that are directly involved with just dealing with DMRs and distribution. Just because a DMR may live in California doesn't mean that I'm talking to them. My job is to support Pro AV dealers. That is my job, is to support Pro AV dealers. There
And
happen
what's
to
a
be,
rep's job?
huh?
What's a rep's job?
Well, a rep's job is to support Pro AV dealers, but you're saying that how do I have time to deal with this customer and that customer? That's one call in the course of a week. That's not a call over and over and over and over again. I'm just saying that those people were not going to talk to a rep firm because they, in their experience with 9,000 other products that they sell, they have had a hard time getting things done when they're not talking to somebody who can directly speak for the manufacturer they're dealing with.
Well, then wouldn't you also call that a hiring problem due to the fact that the reps may not have gotten the education that they needed in order to support the product the way that they should be able to from the manufacturer's standpoint? Aren't you creating
a rep firm can't promise a result on the behalf of a manufacturer without making sure the manufacturer is going to come to their aid and do what they said. That's the problem. That's the problem right there.
You're two-stepping it for the case of a Fortune 500 company.
No, I'm not. I'm not two-stepping.
That's the complaint. That's the complaint that they made. No, that's
they're a dealer. The reason I brought up that they're a Fortune 500 company
was that
Josh,
they were too. Mark,
what on earth are you talking about? You keep trying to.
Okay. Back to your corners. Back to your corners, Bulldogs. All right. You touched on a good point there, Mark, and Josh was talking about it as well. The geographical advantages. I know companies are based in a certain area of the country. Not every large manufacturer or even medium-sized manufacturer that uses a direct sale is everywhere in the country. They have reps throughout the country, but those reps, let's face it, they can't be everywhere like the manufacturer's reps are. There are more manufacturers' reps, and more products. So how does a manufacturer deal with the geography? I know in my area in D.C., it's very, very specific. You have to know the government. You have to know government contracting. How does manufacturers' reps deal with that geographical challenge? Mark.
So for me, you know, I have 3 states, right? So I probably have about 300 to 400 active dealers. Now I happen to, because I work for a company that has a product that's not very technical, we don't have lights, we don't have firmware, we don't have reboots, we don't have to unplug things and plug them back in. There's not a constant supply of calls for those type of issues that come to me, right? We have an inside sales team that helps and takes POs and does all those things. So for things that dealers need to do automatic, like send somebody an order, that doesn't come through me. I'm not a bottleneck for that, right? My job is product education. My job is making sure people get the pricing they need to win jobs, right? And my job is making sure that when things go wrong, that my dealers have somebody directly working for the factory that can say, you know what, I'm chopping that off, go forward with your job, or I'm going to compensate you for 2 days that you didn't get something shipped because FedEx messed up, or whatever that is. And I have the authority to do those things as a dealer. They don't have to work their way through a rep firm and then back to the dealer and then maybe get an answer yes or no. You know, Chuck, when you're on a job site, you need to know something's coming now. You're there for a week. You personally are there for a night sometimes, right? You need to make sure that the person you call has the ability to pull the trigger, right? And he doesn't have to call somebody back in New York where they've closed for the day because he's in California and wait till tomorrow morning to give you a decision on something you need to know now, right? And that's where a direct rep can really make a difference.
Were you intending to answer his question at any point in there about the fact that geographically speaking, there's one of you for 4 states?
For 3 states.
There's
There's one of
sorry,
me for
three.
There's one of me for 3 states, Josh. But the type of product that I represent, there's not this constant need for me to be on site with the product.
But that's your product. Let's explore. Okay, so let's explore another product that
Sure.
might sell directly. That requires a much higher level of support. Let's look at an audio DSP or an audio console. Let's look at a matrix switcher. I mean, Crestron doesn't run through reps.
No, they don't.
So what did they do in order to do that? They built regional facilities to house several people, as opposed to one person.
And Crestron's one of the best companies we have in our industry, and they have a direct sales model that works for them perfectly without rep firms.
Exactly. But under the circumstances of this, also relying on how many people in a given region. Not just one, not just 2, you have to be able to support it. And when a company that doesn't make as much money as Crestron doesn't provide the resources with which to support the dealer base of 300 to 400 people by having half a dozen reps covering that area, or 3, 4, whatever it is. I mean, California is generally split into 2. Oregon and Washington usually get 1, and usually get northern Idaho as well as that kind of western region for most companies. So that's 3 different companies that could be 6 people, 12 people supporting these given areas, whereas with your example, unless you're carrying an entire regional office, it's you. And if you start getting problems, say there was a recall issue. Okay, well now you've got 40 dealers all trying to get a hold of you in one day. How are you going to give them all the deal on the kind of timeline that you're discussing? They need to be able to get a hold of somebody immediately who already has a message from the factory that they can deliver. Because when those kinds of things happen, the factory delivers a message to the rep firms and says, disseminate this information. You guys are there. You can access more people. There's more boots on the street. You can do what you need to do to get that information out. It's a lot harder for one person to do that than it is for 12, and you can't argue with that in those circumstances of trying to offer that kind of a support to a wider region.
Well, that's why we have inside sales, and that's why we have tech support, and that's why we have all these other people that work at a corporate office that can make those phone calls and take those phone calls if we need to. My big point is this, Josh. Why would Crestron knowingly pay way more than they need to have guys that locally at regional offices with brick and mortar if there was no advantage to direct sales over manufacturer's rep? Why would they eat their margin?
Here's the thing, and this is an ego issue with Crestron, Extron, and Biamp in particular. All of them operate on that same model of, we believe our product is so high-end and we believe our product is so important that we're going to make you come to us for training. We're not going to allow you to sell it unless you come to us. They force that on you in order to be a dealer. All 3 of them do. So unless you're willing to abide by their model, it works for them because they're forcing you. If you want to buy their product, you have to go to them. It's an ego issue, and it forces the issue. But if you're talking about...
But that's training, Josh. You could run a training center and not have to have direct salespeople. Why not use reps for sales and just have a local training center?
Because not all the manufacturers in the world have the authority to pull people to them. In fact, most of them don't because they're much smaller margins. They're $20 million companies or less. How are they going to support that? How are they going to support that staff in order to support a nationwide thing? They need to get out there and get people interested in it. They need people driving interest in the product and then having somebody support that training. It's not possible to do that kind of support, technical support with people, unless you have the kind of income that these guys are referring to, which they built up over how many years? They built this up over time.
You're saying Crestron knowingly gives away margin on product to hire people that they don't really need to hire because of their ego. That's what you're saying. They're so proud that they're going to spend more money than they need to sell their product in a region.
At this point in time, do you honestly believe that their sales force are really out there driving things at this point? Or is it the fact that they've gotten themselves so ingrained in the consultant specifications due to the training aspect and due to the fact that they've been doing a few different things differently, it's actually not about having a direct sales or a rep team at all? Wouldn't you want to admit to that at this point? They've gotten themselves buried in this industry. They have, because they're producing a product that people want. That has nothing to do with sales. That has to do with product development. And that has nothing to do with...
So how do people get support? How do people get the support you're saying that a rep firm offers in a local area? They get it through the salespeople, right? Dealers still need support on Crestron. You don't need support on Crestron? Of course you do. So why isn't Crestron just going to use a rep firm and put feet on the ground for that support? They don't need it to go sell to the consultants, but they still need it for support.
They've already built the regional offices. Why would they invest the money in a rep team at this point? They decided to take their money and go elsewhere with it. The same thing.
Yeah, why?
They took the money and went elsewhere.
There's an ROI to
try something different.
There's an ROI.
Okay, ding, 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 ding. We're getting some haymakers being thrown here. All right, quick breath. All right, let's talk about distribution. Let's talk about distribution from the direct versus the rep. The rep deals with a lot of different distribution houses, a lot of different areas where the warehouses, the equipment's warehoused. Direct usually has one or two around the nation that things are warehoused, and the international warehouse. Let's talk about the advantages of direct distribution versus the advantages of rep distribution. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, there's obviously advantages to both, and that's why a company like us utilizes both channels. So we have a direct dealer base, and there are dealers who need support, who bid jobs, who do design build, who need people to do job walks, who do hospitals need OSHPD certifications, OPA and OPM numbers. Those kind of dealers need a lot of dealer support. Then there are other companies that are construction companies that, or maybe electricians, or companies that they come in and do a bunch of rough work, right? And they just need to put in a bunch of back boxes before installation and get some stuff in the wall. Those people may also need our product. They don't need a lot of support. They need to know where the stuff goes. It's already been dictated what it is. They want to buy it through who they buy their rack gear from, who they buy their wire from. They want to send that one truck out, or they want to have that one truck come in. So there's obviously an advantage to that. And the other advantage to that type of model is that sometimes we get incremental business from kind of, I guess, peripheral types of businesses. They're low voltage contractors and IT contractors that may need product like ours intermittently that aren't maybe our core focus as a business, but they need some way to get it, and they've already got a place to do that. So obviously there's advantages to both, and we keep a Midwest and a West Coast warehouse so that we have direct product available from the middle and from the West as well. So, you know, I think there's advantages to both, but I don't think it has anything to do with whether you're using a manufacturer's rep or a direct rep to sell your product. That's a logistics supply chain issue. That's not a sales issue.
Josh?
I'm actually on Mark's side with this one, because one of the interesting things we've been noticing in my particular integrator lately is more and more reps are showing up with representation from an inside salesperson from a local distributor. The reps are starting to partner with distribution, and because they've seen this, they've seen where, I mean, maybe it's they've seen the writing on the wall, and they've seen sort of that, you know, manufacturers are, a lot of manufacturers are trying to explore moving further and further, moving more and more of their dealers over to distribution, so they're having fewer and fewer people to support the direct sale through the rep model. I don't know. I honestly don't know what the change has been causing in this, but I've been seeing it more and more where a distribution house that has its, you know, 20 lines is showing up with a rep who has their 7 lines, and they have 1 or 2 lines that cross over. And so it's one of those things of the reps are saying, well, now you don't have to buy directly, you don't have to set up an account with the manufacturer. Now we can set you up through distribution, we can get you going in this path. So it's been really interesting because the reps and the manufacturers are both pushing this distribution idea, which oddly enough is, well, the distribution model has been around in the US for a long time. It hasn't been the dominant model in the US. It's been much more dominant internationally. Canada is really big on that. It's really big in Europe and in Japan of having either being very direct or being through distribution. And the US is kind of sort have played with the dealer and the rep model a lot longer than anybody else. So it's interesting to see whether or not that's transitioning, whether or not that's moving in a different direction. But we are seeing more and more reps start to partner with these distribution models, and we are with these distribution companies, because it's giving them the added advantage of more things to sell in addition to what they already support. So they have the 7 lines that they support, and now they can tag on all these additional accessory lines that they can do. Oh, we'll sell you the mount. Hey, great. We also work with this distribution firm that sells 7 different display manufacturers. Which one would you like today? By the way, these are the cheapest right now. And so it's kind of giving them that added layer of possibilities when it comes to reps partnering with distribution.
Great. All right. One thing I want to ask about, and this is something that is very important to me. I'm a relationship person. I like to see whoever's selling me anything. I like to see them. I like to see them in my office. I like to see them in my area. I like to bump into them on the street, and I like to talk to them over and over. To me, that makes me feel comfortable buying what they're selling. That makes me feel comfortable going to them for advice, maybe help on a project. Hey, we need some of this, or we need a large quantity, and it just keeps them in my mind of this is the person who I need to go to. So I see a lot of manufacturers reps, and I see a couple in particular pop by a lot, and this is where I think the direct sales really kind of take a hit on that, because I don't see my direct sales rep as often. What can you do for me there, Mark?
Yeah, I'd say, Chuck, what we see in our business is, we've seen both sides. We have one side of our business where for a long time their metric was you just have to be in somebody's office once a month or once every 2 weeks, whether they need you or not. One of the things that we always talk about in sales is when we follow up with somebody, we want to have a valid business reason for doing so, right? I don't want to come in and say, hey, Chuck, what's going on in your business, right? That could be a waste of your time. You could be in the middle of something. Just popping by and dropping a business card isn't always a valuable meeting for anybody. And sometimes it's more of an interruption. It's a got-a-minute meeting, right? I definitely know, I feel you on the relationship. And I'll tell you, I model myself after 2 or 3 reps that I had when I was an integrator, who that was their business. And one did work for a manufacturer's rep firm. I loved him to death. He was one of the best resources I had. I just know that when I needed something special, he still had to get the factory involved. That doesn't mean that I don't like that gentleman, or that I don't trust him to help me, or I wouldn't like to see him more often. What that means is that I know he can't give me the answer that I need sometimes when I actually need to get something done. I try to build those same relationships with my dealers. I mean, especially people who seem to value that. There are certain people who never want to see you unless they have a job, honestly. And there are people who are like you, Chuck, who would like to see you every time you come through. I try to ping Josh every time I'm up in the Bay Area, just in case, to go see him. He's a guy who likes, even if we're not talking about mounts, he's a guy who likes to have that relationship. We cater to that, but we don't have to do that with everybody. We got to remember, not everybody's the same. I have one guy who he never wants to see me unless he's cutting a PO. And if he's cutting a PO and he needs a better price, he'll call me. Otherwise, if I call him, he goes, "What do you want?" He doesn't want to see me. So we all have to balance that. And I think whether you work for a manufacturer or a rep firm, you balance that, and you do it the best you can.
Josh?
Obviously, and we've danced around this, we've gone around it circles and circles about the fact that a rep is going to be more local to you. That is the inherent part of being a rep, is that you are local to the given region. Does that give them the capability of being in front of you more often? Yes, it does. It's physics. Like, you are physically closer to someone. There's nothing you can really do about that. But again, Mark isn't wrong in this case. It's again, I remember cases when I was working for a manufacturer where I got a phone call from dealers because the salesperson, who wasn't the most technical person, wanted to go in and see them and literally baked them cookies just as an excuse to go in. And it was one of those things of, I got a phone call afterwards because it was, what are they doing here? Why are they here? What are they offering me? What value are they giving me? And that's the key word in all of this, is value. What value is coming to you with each visit? That visit may come once a month, like Mark and I. We try and get together whenever he's up in the Bay Area because there's value in that. He might, and I will particularly give credit to the fact that there was value in one of his visits because we managed to save money on a project because he was able to offer me an amount that I didn't know existed before. There was value in that visit. There was value in that conversation, just as there's value in a rep being able to do that. And again, but because Mark is only representing one manufacturing line, he doesn't have to be in front of the people as often necessarily. Whereas with a rep, they have 6-7 lines that they're representing, so they are going to go in and they're in front of you a lot more because they're trying to talk to you about a wide variety of things. This means that they do have the capability of building that relationship potentially a little bit faster. So if there's somebody that is a relationship guy, they're going to go in, they're going to go after that, and they're going to hunt that down because they can say, hey, I can come in and I can bring you this little tiny thing. Let me sell you this widget. It's going to solve your problem this time. And the next time that widget becomes an amplifier. And the next time that amplifier becomes an amplifier and speakers. And the next time it does this, and it grows and expands. And that's where the rep model and the direct model is just cut and dry. It's very, very simple of they are there to provide a value. The sales rep model is going to provide value across the board by saying, I can provide you multiple things in one trip. The manufacturer model that Mark keeps going back to with the direct is, he keeps saying, I can get things done, I can get things done, I can get things done. And what he's getting done is he's changing the price for you because he wants to get the better sale, or he wants to support you in that aspect. But if it comes to the actual product, I've come to find the direct people working for the manufacturer that support the product and the people that are the reps, quite often these days are very much on par. They're going to be able to provide you about the same amount of technical support on average. Yes, there are going to be the excessive high-level people like my opponent here, who is a high-level person. But there are also going to be people that, are going to turn around and every time they ask and say, okay, well, let me talk to the manufacturer about what we can do for you. And the rep is there to have that conversation when someone like Mark can't. Mark can't have that conversation in 400 places at once. The rep can have it in 5 places a day. And those are places that Mark can't necessarily be.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone out there for watching and joining us on AVNation. I want to thank our participants for a great bout, both Mark Coxon and Josh Srago. Coming out swinging, defending their models of sales. And I'd like to just say this has been my pleasure. This is my first AVNation talk show, and I had a great time, and I kind of got lost just looking at these guys. They're extremely, extremely intelligent and well-versed on their information. This has been AV CrossTalk from AVNation. Find this and more pro AV shows at avnation.tv. And stay tuned for from a brief word from our producer to talk about the after party, so to speak.
I feel like I should be voice of God. Hi, it's George. I'm your friendly, non-combative producer. We're going to do a after show on Google Hangouts. You will see it on the AVNation Twitter account. It'll be an invite. It only lets about the first 20 in. Maybe we'll get 4 of you. Maybe we'll get 10. Maybe it'll just be us, but we'll have a party anyway, as you can see. So look for that on AVNation's Twitter feed. Join the Google Hangout. Thank you for watching.